James Madison transfer Terrence Edwards Jr. should be atop of the Louisville men's basketball transfer portal wish list, and the Cardinals will get their opportunity when he visits campus on Tuesday. We'll discuss on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. As always, I want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Portal talk continues for the men's basketball program. James Madison star Terrence Edwards Jr. is going to be on Cardinal campus on Tuesday. I'm going to explain why he should be atop of the Louisville wish list in the portal. Toledo transfer Dante Maddox Jr. has included Louisville in his top 8. And then we're going to discuss huge men's basketball NIL news. Shout out to Rick Kueber. We'll go more in detail at the conclusion of the show. Louisville has already started to construct the roster for next season. 2 players following Pat Kelsey over from the College of Charleston to join the University of Louisville. Rain Smith, who led the College of Charleston in scoring, and James Scott, very athletic freshman with a ton of potential. Good start, as I mentioned on yesterday's show. I did also mention that Louisville still needs to go out and get those bona fide star-level players. And there are potentially 2 of them that we're going to talk about on the show today. It starts with the Sun Belt Player of the Year. Terrence Edwards Jr. helped lead the James Madison Dukes to their best season in program history. He started all 36 games this past season for the Dukes, led the team in scoring with 17.2 points per game, did so on 43, 34, and 81 shooting splits. For those that don't know what that means, 43 is the field goal percentage, 34 is the three-point percentage, and 81 is the free throw shooting percentage. He also averaged 4.4 rebounds per contest and 3.4 rebounds per game, respectively, averaged just under a steal per contest. The 6'6" native of Atlanta, Georgia, was a highly decorated player in the Sun Belt Conference. James Madison obviously ascending into a little bit more of a prominent role in the mid-major consideration and conversation the past couple of seasons. And Edwards is a player that can be looked at as a pivotal part of that equation. Now, there's always the question as to whether or not mid-major guys are going to project to be great at the Power 5 level. Now, I've seen that conversation had over the past couple of days amongst the Louisville fan base, not even just the Louisville fan base, but the national college landscape. And you're starting to see, you look at the Elite 8, you look at the Final Four field, and multiple mid-major transfers are starting for these Final Four teams. Now, not every situation is going to be the same. A player has to fit the system that a coach is running. And obviously, some players' skill sets project better than others. I think Terrence Edwards has the skill set that is going to allow a seamless transition to the Power 5. He's averaged over double digits in his past 2 years, scored just close to 1,500 points in 4 seasons with James Madison. Does it mean that he's going to come in right away and average 17 at the Power 5 level? Perhaps not. I would not bet it. I think that he's still going to be a player that averages in double figures, has a skill set that, in my opinion, fits what Pat Kelsey is looking for, judging based on the offenses that he ran at the College of Charleston. That's sort of the main thing I'm getting stuck on in terms of determining whether or not a potential transfer would be a a beneficial piece to Pat Kelsey's system is because I'll be honest, guys, I didn't watch a ton of College of Charleston. I watched a couple games close to tournament time. I watched them play FAU earlier in the regular season, and it's really hard to decipher. Obviously, the offense reminds you a lot of Nate Oates. The pace of play is very, very quick. Maybe the efficiency numbers don't suggest that they're as good offensively as people think, but the pace of play is quick. I think that that's where Edwards really can fit into the mold. Very, very solid in transition, and has the athleticism and ball handling ability to play multiple positions and lead the break in transition. I look at Pat Kelsey's offense and I'm thinking multiple ball handlers on the court, being able to create your own shot, and obviously being able to shoot the ball from deep. Edwards shooting at 34% on just under 4 attempts. He's I would say, a respected three-point shooter. I wouldn't go as far as saying that he's a sharpshooter by any means, but he's a respected three-point shooter. His release on his jump shot is a little lower than you would want it to be, but has the ability to create separation with his ball handling to where it's not that large of an issue. And especially since Edwards is 6'6", he has the size to go up against other players at the position to where I think for Louisville, he projects, or if he were to join Louisville, he would project as more of a 2 or a 3, but has a good ability to handle the ball, has a 21% assist rate. So even though he only averages 3.4 assists, although I would argue is fairly efficient for his role at James Madison. Now, he was more of a secondary ball handler, maybe even primary at sometimes. I don't think that that's the case at the Power 5. I think that he's going to be relied upon to be more of a scoring 2 guard or even a scoring small forward. Obviously, positionless basketball. I think he can play either one. Defensively, fairly underrated. We talk about his offensive game, and rightfully so. The Sun Belt Player of the Year led his team in scoring, but he's also a very solid defender, good hands, great understanding of the half-court defense and being able to jump passing lanes and using that 6'6" frame to his advantage in that regard. So defensively, I think it would be a breath of fresh air for this program. You look at what he's done this past season, scored in double digits in both games of the NCAA tournament against Wisconsin and Duke, so showed that, he can be efficient against top competition. That's one of the main things we worry about is, can a player from a mid-major be able to take that jump to the Power 5 and play comparably at that level? I think that he has played some solid teams. You look in the conference championship, he had 19 points. Going on down the line, James Madison played Michigan State early on in the season. First game of the year, he had 24 points in Sparty to win that game in East Lansing. Also 5 rebounds. Pretty solid rebounder for his role, 4 rebounds per game. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as saying he's a true 3-level scorer, although he can score in the mid-range. A lot of his offense is coming at the rim. In fact, almost half of his shots will come in the paint around the rim. He is, I would say, a drive-first player. He ranked 85th. He ranked in the 85th percentile nationally in isolation opportunities, so he's comfortable going one-on-one. Also is comfortable running the pick and roll and being the ball handler on the pick and roll. So a lot of his offense is coming from the rim. Outside of that, it's 3-point shots. Statistically, he was better from the right side than he was the left, although it was fairly respectable, 34% on just about 4 attempts per game. Offensively, I think he would be able to come to Louisville and score in double digits, which is something that if you're Pat Kelsey, you need to go out and get guys that can be bona fide scoring options. I think Terrence Edwards, although he's not ranked in the top 10, maybe even not top 20 of overall transfers, according to some sites like 24/7 Sports, I think that his skill set fills, a role here at Louisville. I think that it fits what Pat Kelsey is looking for. Solid passer, can create his own shot. I think personally, when I used to do scouting for the NBA draft, one of the main skills that I looked for in draft players or draft eligible players was the ability to create one's offense off the dribble. Edwards is able to do that. Even though the mechanics on the jump shot might seem like the release is a little bit lower than it should be, he does a great job of creating separation on his shot and just overall being able to get effective looks that help him out. So the ability to create his own offense, solid passing, underrated defense, has been comfortable in transition. I think it fits what Pat Kelsey's looking for. I think Edwards should be at the top. If he's not number one, I would say he's probably up there towards 1, 2, 3, definitely in the top 5 for certain. He's a veteran guy and has been very successful at the mid-major level and has played well against Power 5 teams. So he will be on campus on Tuesday after visiting Florida State, and we know how this works. It's sort of like football. If you can get a player to commit on campus or, right after his visit, then that's what you have to do in the portal. So Edwards will be on campus on Tuesday. The Cardinals are being extra involved in the portal because they have to with the numbers. They've been busy, and they've been involved with some top mid-major guys. Another mid-major player that we're going to talk about is Dante Maddox Jr. He just released his top 8. It is star-studded. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Toledo Star, but the Cardinals are giving it their best shot. We'll explain why he would be a good fit for the Cardinals program here momentarily after we tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Also in the app, you can toggle the feature for all-in pricing that shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Do yourself a favor. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Cardinal fans, got a question for you. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to constantly find yourself turning down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Usually when we talk about a top 8, when it comes to recruiting, we take everything with a grain of salt because it's like, well, recruits usually might do this for attention or, they'll do it for fan engagement. But when it comes to the transfer portal and the limited amount of time that players have with the portal window, when a recruit or when a transfer releases a top 8, even though there's 8 teams, it's still significant. And that's the case for Toledo guard Dante Maddox Jr. releasing his top 8. And the Cardinals ended up making that list with Creighton, Xavier, Illinois, Oklahoma, TCU, Michigan, and Kansas. So a lot of Midwest flavor in this top 8. Maddox Jr. is a highly sought-after transfer for good reason. Fantastic three-point shooter. Averaged over 40% from deep in 3 of his collegiate seasons out of 4. He spent his first 2 years at Cal State Fullerton before transferring to Toledo, where he posted back-to-back double-digit scoring seasons. This past year, 15.6 points per game, which led the Rockets in scoring. The 6'2" native of Chicago Heights, Illinois, shot 44% from the field overall, 40% from 3, and 86% from the free throw line, 4.3 rebounds per game, which is pretty solid for a 6'2 guard, and 3 assists per contest. I will say that he had I think it was 15% assist rate. So I think he's a little bit better of a passer than the statistics are claiming. But Maddox is he represents the mantra of, you can never have too many shooters on the court. And he literally is the representation of, you have to guard this guy from the minute he steps foot inside the half court, because 22 of his made 3-pointers this past year came from over 25 feet of distance. That's incredible. I believe it's more than what Rain Smith had at Charleston. Now, Maddox is more than just a 3-point shooter. He's pretty solid around the rim, 6'2", able to utilize his speed and ability to change direction quickly to be efficient around the rim, 55% in the paint. So pretty solid for a 6'2" guard, very crafty with the basketball. It allows him to get his shot off pretty well, whether that be in transition, whether that be isolation. He operates really, really effectively being the ball handler in pick and roll situations. And he's just as crafty as a 3-point shooter there is. Whether it's catch and shoot situations, shooting above the break, off the pick and roll. Spot up is where he really, really makes his money. 94th percentile in the country on spot up opportunities, which I think being a 6'2", probably I'd say combo guard, more of an undersized 2. But like I said, he's a better passer than he's given credit for because of those assist numbers. I think that for Louisville, he would slide into that same role, secondary ball handler that utilizes the pick and roll well and is able to stretch the court. You can never have too many shooters. Like Terrence Edwards Jr., I think he fits what you're looking for offensively. He averaged 1.4 steals per game defensively, so active hands, solid vision, ability to jump the passing routes. Main thing is, will that defensive ability translate to the Power 5 level? One can be led to believe it can. I think that if he's shooting that well at the Power 5, he's going to have a Tyler Perry-esque impact like the Northwestern transfer or North Texas transfer did this year for Kansas State. Forgive me for that. But it's going to be hard to get Dante Maddox, 6'2" junior from Chicago Heights, Illinois. So you would imagine that Brad Underwood's program that just got to an Elite Eight is going to be key. Next year, probably not going to have Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins, maybe Marcus Danask. I don't necessarily know who all is going to the draft and who's not, who's transferring, who's not, but they're going to have opportunities in the starting lineup for players to come in and get some solid minutes. So you would expect that Illinois is probably, in my opinion, and this is no inside information, this is just pure speculation and pure intuition. I would expect that Illinois, if they're not the favorite, they're damn near close. And Kansas is right there as well. And they need shooting. Maddox would fit what they're looking for. Who knows? Creighton, also with Greg McDermott, they're coming off of a Sweet 16 run to where they're going to have to replace some guards. And you can see Maddox fit in that position as well. Penny Boone, the Toledo running back transfer, I thought it was interesting that he was recruiting Maddox on social media today. I thought that was pretty neat. Now, Maddox did go to school in Ohio. Pat Kelsey's from Cincinnati. I see people trying to draw those parallels, although I don't necessarily think it's as significant as people want to make it out to be. But ultimately, I do think that Louisville will at least have a fighting chance. Like football, remember when I said if a player is visiting, that means Louisville is very serious about said player. if a player visits Louisville, and this is even more important because of the window that players have to enter the portal and pick their school. If a player visits portal, it is very, very serious. I don't really even think that we have to address that. But the main thing to focus on now is you would expect that before someone makes a commitment, they're going to ultimately go to see what that program's all about on campus. So that's the main thing to focus on here. I think Louisville's going to have a great opportunity to flip this roster with big-time names like Terrence Edwards Jr. and Dante Maddox Jr. One of the reasons why is because of the huge NIL news that was identified on Monday morning on ESPN 680 93.9 The Ville. We'll tell you about what that was if you missed it, and if you did hear about it, we'll explain why it is as significant as it is. We'll do that momentarily after we tell you about our friends over at Amazon Fire TV. For me, my Fire Stick has been the game changer during the tournament and honestly in everyday life. It provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes. I plug it right into my TV, and I get free and live television as well, whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the Final Four coming up. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. And Fire TV recently created the Fire TV Channels app to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. If you haven't checked out Fire TV Channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. The announcement was teased all weekend that there was some huge news regarding the 502 Circle, which is the official NIL collective for the University of Louisville Cardinals. And on Monday, it was explained, and it lived up to the hype. On the Drew Diener show on ESPN 680 93.9 The Ville, Rick Kueber, longtime donor of Louisville Athletics, very successful businessman within the city and the state, announced on that show that he, his brother, his family, and Glow Brands, which Kueber obviously is a part of, would be matching up to $1 million in NIL donations to the men's basketball program. It is the biggest announcement in Louisville NIL history by far. The significance that it has is absolutely, you cannot understate how important this is. Because already within a couple of hours, and I don't necessarily know what the numbers are looking like now as of Monday evening, but literally a couple hours after that announcement at 9:30 this morning, fans had already raised over $125,000 in NIL to the men's basketball program. You're talking, assuming that this gets up to $1 million, which I would believe that it would. And even if it doesn't, if it comes close, you're talking about one of the most effective, one of the largest NIL collectives for men's basketball across the country. We already know how the collective has done with football. It's been incredible. I heard talk, I'm not sure if Kueber mentioned this or not, but somebody said that Louisville was going to have a top 10 collective for football and men's basketball. It's huge. You can't understate it. Recruiting might have, there might be some effects from the shoe game, Nike, Adidas, still lingering around. But NIL has really triumphed as being one of the main decision makers. Zach Soskin said in one of my first Twitter spaces that kids want to get paid. And Brian Smith, Locked On Podcast Network national recruiting analyst, said it's all about getting paid. Kids want to know, where they can get paid the most and play in a system that they want to play in. Getting the monetary, because people say, well, how great is NIL? There are some big name schools across the country that are struggling to raise money. and it's hurting their recruiting. No matter how prestigious a program is, if you are not in tune with the NIL times and the NIL landscape, you're going to get left behind. It doesn't matter who you have coaching if you don't have the NIL infrastructure and budget in place. So shout out to Mr. Kueber. This is a very generous move that he is putting into place, and he has been very, very generous to Louisville athletics. Obviously, the training facility, practice facility, the Little Yum is called the Kueber Center for a reason. But this is groundbreaking news. I mean, anytime, number one, that you could potentially get a $1 million donation, but now there is a very, very real possibility that you could get $2 million added to your budget, and that's not considering what you already think that you might have. Push this conversation back to about a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago. I mentioned that I spoke to someone that was very much in the know when it comes to Louisville NIL and the recruiting budget and the financials of the whole, situation. I was told not to worry about NIL because there was some new money. There was commitments from substantial boosters already. The only thing is he had to get some old boosters back. And if you can get Rick Kueber to make this pledge, then you would assume that Pat Kelsey is really, really working all lines of opportunity. It's not going to be an issue to where if you're talking about the budget that Louisville has, and let's say they do get up to that $1 million, you get up to $2 million. I mean, there's been that number floated at $4 million, $3 to $4 million. I can't confirm nor deny because truthfully, I don't know. This is not me withholding information. This is just me truthfully not knowing because sometimes you keep that fairly close to chest. But it's huge. This is huge news. This is groundbreaking, potentially. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as saying that it can change the landscape in college sports and how things are done. But I think that an announcement like this is fairly significant nationally, not just locally, because, you're all about trying to get ahead of the NIL curve. And who knows what's going to end up with NIL, if there's going to be, regulations on it or what's going to happen. Truthfully, I don't think that there is ever going to be regulations, but we'll see. Tomorrow is to be seen, but it's huge news. And Louisville has really committed to getting ahead of the curve. Shout out to Dan Furman, the president of the 502 Circle, Mark Spiegel. I think it's Spiegel, not Spiegel. Regardless of which one it is, Mark, I appreciate all the work. Apologize for if I'm saying it wrong. If you're listening to this, he is the founder of the 502 Circle. And then obviously guys like Zach Soskin and company that have really been instrumental in making sure that Louisville is innovative in NIL and making sure that they're not, on the outside looking into where Pat Kelsey, Jeff Brom are going to have great resources at their disposal for NIL. I will take this time to piggyback off of this news and once again encourage you all to commit some NIL to women's basketball, volleyball, some other sports that don't get as much. Not, knocking what Kueber's doing because it's fantastic. Also, two things can be true at one time. Let's also donate to women's basketball and such. But great news, and it's groundbreaking. It's huge news. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you